it's interesting to compare that to traditional home placement testing, which I think, you know, for your FMCG brands, you're quite used to that. So this is actually quite an efficient way of doing home placement testing, whereby you have recruitment online. And the other thing is that you're getting, you can consider the research, all the research you do, and all that content you can't use or you're not using. So all positive product reviews in traditional research would stay in a report, locked away somewhere, and this is a way of actually getting more from the consumer feedback. Now the next paper, which I will introduce with my colleague Dini, is related to work that BDRC is doing with Try and Review, where we had identified a way of getting more consumer insight from their panel. So let me introduce BDRC Asia, which is part of the BDRC group, the UK's largest independently owned research firm, with offices in the US, UK, South Africa, Singapore, Indonesia, China and Australia. And it was earlier this year acquired by BVA, which is France's third largest research group. So BDRC Asia specialises in the new, being new product development, new market entry, concept testing, and does look at innovative ways of looking at customer experience in identifying more advanced consumers in the market. I'm going to speak with Dini Islami, who's one of the founder researchers at BDRC Asia Indonesia. She's a research director here, serving brands in FMCG, telecom, and financial services. So Dini would like to come up. I will just start, though, by talking about the background to the work we're doing with Try and Review. So we kind of saw this as an opportunity of tapping into some of the more advanced consumers in the market. We felt that the consumers that Try and Review had on their panel showed characteristics of advanced consumers being ahead of the curve. And if we could gain more insights from these consumers, it would help brands to plan for evolving categories and to gain a lead over competitors. And I'm going to start with a bit of theory. Some of you may have seen this before, but it's called the product adoption life cycle, or innovation adoption curve, or Rogers adoption curve. And this does apply to all categories, whether it's mobile banking, whether it's the next iPhone, makeup, pretty much every consumer goods product. What you have is that when a product is introduced, like a new innovative product is introduced within a category, those who buy it first are called the innovators, representing just 2.5% of consumers. And they are, by nature, adventurous, interested in anything new, and they may have close contacts to people, to the sources of new products, so they might actually know people in the industry. So, for example, people who are first to buy the new mobile phone might actually be working in the mobile phone industry anyway. And then there are the early adopters, which represent 13.5% of consumers. And they are typically those who have an opinion about products. They pay attention to what innovators have discovered, and they tend to push those ideas out to a broader culture. And these people, traditionally they've kind of been thought of as more wealthy, more sophisticated, but that's not necessarily the case. They generally have more of an interest within the category, and they tend to be younger, but again, it's not always the case. As we go through the innovation cycle, characteristics of the early majority, that is 34% of the market, they are the large majority who are adopting the products a bit ahead of the curve. they follow products that start to have mass market appeal. They can be risk averse, and in fact most consumers are risk averse, but they're not afraid of change, as compared to the late majority, which has the same size of about 34%, that they adopt products when friends have adopted it, but they are generally more resistant to change. You have the laggards, who are 16% of the population, and they focus on traditions, want to hang on to traditional things, and are very resistant to change, and they may only adopt a product after it's actually been replaced by another product. So we looked at we felt that the Try and Review panel would have the characteristics of innovators and early adopters, and who are mainly represented here in that top 16%. Now, why are advanced consumers important? Well, they can help you in terms of if you're getting insight into advanced consumers. It helps you to identify the products bought by early adopters, but yet by the early majority. So you'll see what are the new products that are going to become popular. It aids you in product development because you can assess the unmet needs of consumers who are better able to articulate their views. In other words, they have an opinion and they can improve on products that are already in the market. You can identify the up-and-coming brands, which big brands, they could be potential acquisition targets. So you could acquire them before they become too big to acquire, or perhaps when they acquire you. And then the advanced consumers are, in a sense, an extension to your own research and development. They provide the insight into the future of categories. Now, we thought the Try and Review panelists demonstrate the characteristics of early adopters and innovators, and we called that advanced consumers. Now, you might think, well, there are other ways of getting these advanced consumers. For example, just do any survey of a cross-section of the population, and you could do attitudinal questions, and sometimes in order to identify early adopters and innovators, a survey would be asking attitudinal questions. But what happens is that people tend to overclaim how innovative and how open they are, so they tend to think they're further up the innovation cycle than they actually are. So we prefer to look at what people actually do. So, for example, the people who opt into the Try and Review panel have an interest in that category. They will show more advanced characteristics, and they want to articulate their thoughts. They want to share their opinions. But remember what I said earlier about proof of concept. So when BDRC and Try and Review developed this, we had to prove that these consumers were different from your ordinary consumers. So our test market was Singapore, and we did a survey in November. The survey was on facial products, which is generally a high involvement category. Women use them every day pretty much. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of brands, and there's a lot of product innovation. So what we did is we had two panels which were matched by age group. So we surveyed people from 25 to 29, 30 to 34, 35 to 40 years. So same age groups, two panels. And we had our control panel of ordinary consumers. That's just from standard consumer access panel, who we felt would generally show the characteristics of the early and late majority, who represent about 2/3 of the market. And we did a survey of 200 women who use facial products every day with those age groups. And then we had Try and Review, the Try and Review panel. Now what we did was we initially asked the Try and Review panel to do a survey, an online survey, with no incentive, right? So there was nothing in it for them to do this survey. But within 9 days, we got 156 consumers who replied and did that survey. And we described them as the enthusiasts because they did the survey primarily because they're interested in the category. And then we did some more just to boost the sample with an incentive or a prize draw. And there was another 362. So the total was 518 consumers. And what we look for, we analyze these 3 groups: the ordinary consumers of 200 from the standard consumer access panel, and then our advanced consumers, which included the 518, the total try and review panel, and then the enthusiasts, the 150 or so, who did the survey with no incentive. And what we looked out for was differences in things like brand adoption, product usage, purchase patterns within the facial care category. Now, I don't know much about beauty products, so I'm not going to go through the results. Dinny knows more about female beauty products than me, so I'm going to hand over to Dinny, who's going to take you through what these 2 surveys showed us. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Piers. Good morning, everyone. So, Piers, in the beginning of the presentation, Piers already said about the innovation cycle, where I think all of us is already aware about it, but how do we map this new methodology into market research is a bit unique as well. So we are here would like to prove whether using the advanced consumer is really different or giving us a different insight to our products. So first of all, we found out that advanced consumer is different from the ordinary consumers, especially because they are starting with following more brands as compared to the ordinary one. So it means it gives us more information that they are comparing one and another brand more comparing to ordinary one. And their source of information is also a bit higher. No, I mean it is higher comparing to ordinary consumers, especially because they are following more brands. Their channel of information is also through social media. So what is the impact from this? So we see that because they are following more brands, meaning they are having better knowledge about the products. And because they are having better knowledge of the products as well, it gives them more space to research or doing some research about the product itself. So it is quite different from ordinary consumer, where they are usually tend to be only following the trends. Let's say, oh, this brand is happening, so they are using it. But the advanced consumer, they are doing the research first. They do or they read 5 or more reviews about the products, and then they are willing to try the product. And because they are having better product knowledge, as well as because they are doing the research more about the products, meaning it is also give them the opportunity to have higher involvement towards the products. And the impact of this is also they are willing to experiment more. The benefit of having advanced consumer is also one of them, because they are willing to experiment more and they are having better product knowledge, meaning they are willing to give more objective feedback, which is based on their own experience. So it is more honest rather than someone that we call it like celebgram who are getting endorsement. So everything is like good feedback. Like Alexia said before, that using this kind of panel, we are getting a balanced feedback, those who are giving negative feedback and positive feedback based on their real experience. So from this result also, we are seeing that there is also a trend among the advanced consumer, which is currently they are still using the upper mass product or upper mass brand. But since they are getting better knowledge, they are reading more reviews, they aware about there are so many brands in the market, so there is a trend that they are now moving into more premium brands. So this is actually the kind of brands that we are evaluating here. This is only the examples. And because of that, in the facial products category, advanced consumer usually use more than one brands because they would like to experiment on their own. And it's also, in terms of the frequency, it is having higher frequency. From these slides, and more than one brands, and they are using it in more frequent usage, it gives them the opportunity to articulate more about their needs. They try more than one brand, so they already experience it. So that's why when they would like to choose another brands or another products, they already have specific needs in their minds. So we see that from this survey, the advanced consumer is more articulate, where when we are asking about open-ended questions, they are giving more feedback rather than the ordinary consumers. I mean, ordinary consumer, let's say when we are talking about satisfaction, do you satisfied with this kind of product? Usually they will say yes. And what is the reason that drives you satisfied with this product? They will be saying, nothing special, I just feel satisfied with this product. That is the case when we as the users of market research usually get confused about, so what is the next step from this result? So from this study on facial care, on facial products, what we can learn is that by touching the advanced consumer, we understand that there is a potential growth of certain products, because advanced consumer usually using wider range of product. So that's why from this study we see that facial mask, toner, and serum is becoming more popular as compared to what the ordinary consumer is saying, because they have limited product range that they are using as compared to the advanced consumer. And from using the TNR panel also, we get the understanding of how do we communicate, or how do we help the clients on how to communicating their new products or brands, because advanced consumer can specifically say that I keep changing some of brands because it depends on my skin conditions, as well it depends on different time of a day itself. So we can use these two type of information when we are communicating the brand or the products. Like we said before, that usually advanced consumer are willing to experiment, so it is reflected that's why advanced consumer are using and considering quite different brands, especially among the enthusiasts. Like peers saying that enthusiasts is those who are volunteering joining the survey. And therefore, in terms of the feedback towards brands is also quite different. So we see that among ordinary consumers, the product is also quite mass product, while among the advanced consumer, there is a combination between both and even more into upper mass and premium brands. So because they experience by themselves, it means they already know what their needs. It is into specific needs. So that's why when they are going to buy the new products or facial products in the market, they already stated that perceived benefits, which is what we highlight here is for advanced consumer, they have specific needs or perceived benefits of facial care products as compared to the ordinary consumers. And when we talk about ideal facial product, also they can talk more about their own needs about the facial product itself. In the beginning, we are also saying that 72% find out about facial products from social media, and we see that it is happening among the enthusiasts, which is higher in every category of the social media information, ranging from product recommendation as well as the discussion forums. And because they are searching the information through social media and they are following more brands in social media as well, it also reflected on kind of channel that they are purchasing the brands. So because it is through online, that's why it is reflected that the online shopping website is also high among the TNR panel, as well as special boutique store for them buying the products. So what prompting them is also related to something online, where we see that because advanced consumers are more open-minded, they are willing to try new products, it is easier for them to attracted by the online review. And aside from that, it's also because of the skin condition is changing, while for the ordinary consumer is usually because of the product is no longer available in the market. So the other trends is also in facial product. We see that it is not only happening in Singapore, but it's also, I think, happening in across Asia because of the Korean facial products with 10 steps of skincare, something like that. It's also impacting how people reacting about this category, as well as the information about natural ingredients. So I think the big questions now, is it the time for us to use the advanced consumer, or why should we use advanced consumer rather than the ordinary consumers? So we see that now the time is changing, everything is talking about technology, and it makes the organization recognize that innovation is a must. It's not only on the product level, but also on how to communicate the products. So usually in facial products, we only give general benefit information, while actually now people already start thinking about specific benefits of the products, as well as what would be the difference between our products with other products. And yes, of course, there is some disruptive innovators in the market, like let's say Apple, Amazon, Virgin, Dyson, but I think most of the brands cannot be this advanced. It took some time to be this advanced, but from the study also we see that many of them can be adaptive innovators, at least being ahead of the curve, or early majority, what we say in the beginning. And the adaptive innovators need insight to establish what are the up and coming brands, product, unmet needs, and latest trends. So it is not necessarily that by using advanced consumer, meaning we will know about the exact trends in the market, not really. But then from using the advanced consumer, we can get the more objective feedback, which is related to their own experience, and we see that it can reflect some of the market, because Piers mentioned in the beginning in the innovation cycles that advanced consumer can influence the remaining of the market. So what we are doing next is, we see that it is proven that using TRR panel, it is no ordinary consumer access panel. They are showing the characteristic of advanced consumer, which is the early adopters and innovators, who can influence the remaining of the market. So it is useful for us to start touching the advanced consumers. And then adaptive innovators also can be large established brand with financial strength. Of course, for people who are willing to experiment more brands, I think they also need to have sufficient funds to support what they are liking to do, but it can allow them to buy up smaller disruptive innovators or develop new products quickly. I mean, not only new products quickly, but also improve existing products in the market. Because adaptive innovators is also those who are watching the market. So let's say we cannot reach everyone in the market, but if we are touching this segment, it can help us knowing about what happens in the market. So BVA BDRC is now partnering with Try and Review. What we are showing today is the study happens in Singapore, but we are also trying to undertake similar study in Indonesia on beauty and personal care products. But there is also a possibility to extend this to another product as well. And the result will be produced as the annual trends of the market across Southeast Asia. So I think that's it from me. If there is any questions.
All right. So thanks, Denny. Just round of applause for Denny, please.